What's this? Musk stabbed Trump in the back, saying that he's too old to be president and that he would be 82 by the end of his term, which is too old to be the CEO of anything, let alone the United States. Well, that's a surprisingly brave and honest thing for Elon Musk to say. Oh, right, sorry, this was before he endorsed the man who was too old to be the president of anything, let alone the United States, to be the, President of the United States.
All in.
All in. But I gotta say, Musk is actually correct here, that Trump is too old to be president of anything. Statistically, if Trump gets elected, just from the actuary tables, he's got about a 25% chance of dying in office. Add obesity to that, and it almost doubles. Look, Biden was just too old, but ultimately did the right thing. Trump is too old, but ultimately did the wrong thing. You know, typically by the time you're getting to this point...
In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the...
Yeah, when you're at that point, you're more thinking about putting them in a home and keeping them away from sharp objects and pregnant women, not putting them in charge of your nuclear stockpile. I mean, sure, if you want a sophisticated, erudite argument as to why Trump shouldn't be let anywhere near the levers of power, watch Legal Eagle's video on the matter. It's basically criminals running against the law.
This really is an election between a felon and a prosecutor.
With a party that brands itself as the party of law and order being the one that is backing the convicted criminal.
Trump is a convicted felon many times over. Trump is now banned from serving as an officer and director of any New York corporation. Trump was forced to pay $25 million to students who attended Trump University because the real estate seminars were a scam. Trump is banned from running a charity in New York because he misused charity funds for his political campaign. If a man is judged by the company that he keeps, Trump has surrounded himself with corruption. His 2016 campaign chairman, Paul Manafort, and vice chairman, Rick Gates, were convicted of conspiracy against the United States. His advisors, Roger Stone, Peter Navarro, and George Papadopoulos, committed obstruction of justice, contempt of Congress, and making false statements. Trump organization CFO, Alan Weisberg, was convicted of tax fraud. Trump's national security advisor, Mike Flynn, Chief strategy man was convicted of contempt of Congress and meeting his roles. His former personal attorney, Fisher Michael Cohen, was convicted of campaign finance violations. His fundraiser, like Brady, went down for corruption and bribery. Even his lawyers, Ken Chesebro, Jenna Ellis, and Sidney Powell, pleaded guilty to crimes related to the 2020 election.
But it's more than that. The last time Trump was president, the president was not above the law. However, some of the Supreme Court judges he appointed looked at some of the criminal things that he did and decided that actually, no, the correct interpretation of the Constitution is the president is above the law.
Yes, the Supreme Court has effectively given law-breaking presidents, and we're not singling any one law-breaking president out or anything, could be any felonious president, almost absolute immunity from criminal prosecution. The court effectively creates a law-free zone around the president, upsetting the status quo that has existed since the founding.
Turns out Nixon was right all along.
Well, when the president does it, that means that it is not illegal.
Shame is that he didn't know the proper interpretation of the Constitution from the Supreme Court. Because it turns out he actually did do nothing wrong and therefore didn't even need to be pardoned for doing something wrong. He's no longer really a president, he's a king, accountable to no one. Hell, it's long been lamented that you give anyone unlimited power. Eventually, the temptation to wield it will break even the most pure of character. Power corrupts, and ultimate power corrupts ultimately. However, we're not really talking about that. We're talking about someone with the impulse control of Trump. Giving him unlimited power is like putting an alcoholic in charge of the brewery. It's like putting a compulsive gambler in charge of the casino. The cute irony is the origin story of the United States is basically a people unsatisfied with the capricious taxes of an unaccountable king, who have now taken the interesting turn of deciding the correct interpretation of their constitution means that actually that's exactly the sort of unaccountable power that the president should have. Look, Trump is almost dead already and his brain is pudding. And Musk is right. Whoever puts the words into the teleprompter controls the president. Just read what's on the teleprompter, fatso.
I will create a government efficiency commission tasked with conducting a complete financial and performance audit of the entire federal government and making recommendations for drastic reforms.
He's just a puppet reading the words.
And Elon, because he's not very busy,
Just read the words on the other
has
screen.
agreed to head that task force.
But even before his brain was pudding, he was the poster child for populism. Well, what's wrong with populism, I hear you ask? It's what the people want. It's what's popular, right? No, not really. It's about exploiting outrage from real problems without any real solutions. With maybe the most iconic example from recent history being Brexit. You know, the UK had real problems and the populists come along and blame all of the UK's problems on the European Union. Simple, clear, decisive and popular. It was just that it happened not to be true.
Outside Europe, we could have prosperity on a level that we can't even imagine.
Promised economic gains have failed to materialize. Britain has missed out on much of the recovery in global trade since the pandemic.
But that didn't matter. All they required was you vote leave and all of the UK's problems would be solved. And the UK did leave the EU.
And today, honesty, decency and belief in nation.
Where we will, for the foreseeable future, after March the 29th, actually be in a worse position than we were before we voted to leave.
I think now is going to win.
On their side, who speak of nothing but fear of the consequences of leaving the EU. And
the loss of EU workers has worsened labor shortages in healthcare, hospitality, and agriculture. Businesses are also facing higher costs and more red tape.
Okay. Why didn't you, the face of Brexit over years, why didn't you deliver a roadmap?
Because they wouldn't use me, they wouldn't talk to me.
Yeah, but why didn't you publicly talk about a roadmap during the campaign?
Let June the 23rd go down in our history as our...
Brexit has failed.
Brexit has failed.
But what if your legacy
if we reach a
is a Horlicks of a Brexit?
If on March 29th next year we leave the treaties, even if it is a bad deal,
June the 23rd go down
even if we're in a rotten place,
in our history
we will historically have left the treaties
as our Independence Day.
Maybe that's why a staggering new poll published by Unheard shows that 647 of the 650 UK constituencies now think Brexit was a mistake.
And shock and horror, it solved none of the UK's problems. Indeed, it exacerbated them.
in the English county election. Before we get the campaign into full swing, I want to give those county councillors who really believe in the country, who understand and know that things need to be turned around because we're in such a state of decline.
Populism is about being outraged by problems and blaming scapegoats rather than finding real solutions. I mean, really, what problems has Trump ever actually solved? You know, his healthcare plan, which he had ready to go at the beginning of his last term, right?
We will be able to immediately repeal and replace Obamacare. Have to do it.
And if you're wondering why Trump doesn't sound like he's got issues with mental decline here, it's because it was in 2016. It's 8 years ago now.
And it will be such an honor for me, for you, and for everybody in this country, because Obamacare...
We will issue detainers for illegal immigrants who are arrested for any crime whatsoever, and they will be placed into immediate removal proceedings.
has to be replaced, and we will do it, and we will do it very, very quickly. It is a catastrophe.
Really terrific, I believe, healthcare plan coming out.
We're going to have a healthcare plan that's going to be second to none. It's going to be great.
The plan is coming out over the next 4 weeks.
We're signing a healthcare plan within 2 weeks, a full and complete healthcare plan. We're going to be doing a very inclusive healthcare plan. I'll be signing it sometime very soon.
So just a yes or no, you still do not have a plan?
I have concepts of a plan. I'm not president right now. But if we come up with something, I would only change it if we come up with something that's better and less expensive.
Look, Trump was president for 4 years already. What did he do to make America great again? You know, other than the healthcare plan that's going to be ready in the next 2 weeks for almost a decade straight now. Well, other than that, I mean, he sure as hell screwed up COVID. I mean, remember him showboating about there are only 15 cases, soon to be down to 0.
Are the words about a pandemic at this point?
No, we're not at all, and we have it totally under control. It's one person. You have a very small number of people in the country right now with it. It's like around 12, 15 people, and the 15 within a couple of days is going to be down to close to 0. That's a pretty good job we've done.
Yeah, 15 cases soon down to 0 turned into 100 million cases and 1 million dead Americans. Now, you can argue that, yeah, a lot of those people were old anyway. Not so sure they would feel the same way, but it's still more Americans than died in World War I. Actually, World War I and World War II combined. In fact, you can throw in the Korean War, the Vietnam War, the Persian Gulf War. In fact, you can throw in all of the wars of the last century, and you still had more dead Americans from coronavirus than all those wars put together.
15 people, and the 15 within a couple of days is going to be down to close to 0. That's a pretty good job we've done.
Look, I drove some 8,000 miles across the US this summer. Yeah, I got around. And sure, the US has some real problems, but none of those are going to be solved by putting unaccountable, angry grandpa in charge of the country. If you want a chance at making America great again, you need smart people who understand sophisticated problems and are committed to addressing them to change the country. Kind of like if you're getting surgery. You want a qualified surgeon who understands anatomy. You want the elitist doctor who thinks he's better than you because he knows the difference between a vein and an artery. You know, stuff that might functionally affect his ability to do his job. You do not want a doctor whose only qualifications for getting the job were loyalty to the head of the hospital. Project 2025 won't make America great again. It will shoot it in the leg. Maybe it will be fatal. Maybe America will recover in, 10, 20 years, that sort of thing. But it's basically going to be the greatest act of collective national self-harm since Brexit.
Isn't it funny? You know, when I came here 17 years ago, and I said that I wanted to lead a campaign to get Britain to leave the European Union, you all laughed at me.
Where we will, for the foreseeable future, after March the 29th, actually be in a worse position than we were before we voted to leave.
You're on your own. You've got no one else to blame. If it goes down the shitter from here, you're on your own.
Let June the 23rd go down in our history as our
Brexit has failed.
Day. Well, I have to say, you're not laughing now, are you?
Yeah, that's exactly what anyone with a brain does when they watch people vote to self-sabotage their own country. Switching from giving the best qualified person the job to hiring someone for party cronyism isn't going to make America great again. It's going to shoot it in the foot. However, just because you can show something is demonstrably stupid, don't be lulled into the false sense of security that means that it will win the vote. I watched Brexit. I tried to convince people that it was a bad idea. I watched the people cheer as it won. I watched them gloat for years. We won, you lost, get over it. I watched the cheers and moronic hoots slowly die as Brexit morphed from something that would save Britain to, well, maybe it won't be so bad, to, well, at least it's not as bad as some people said it would be, to almost a decade on. The eventual quiet acceptance that it was an expensive way of solving nothing. Sorry, the most expensive way of actually making things worse. Now, about this time, there'll be people in the comments saying that I'm merely a scientist who doesn't understand politics, whereas there's just a big brain that you should totally trust on politics. Well, I'll tell you what, just like you didn't need a big brain to see that Brexit would be a train wreck, but I'll tell you what else I can spot. You know, when I watch a film like Star Wars or V for Vendetta, I can tell you it's a cartoonishly evil fascist government.
At this very moment, in a system far from here, the new republic lies to the galaxy.
It's deliberately portrayed as an over-the-top avatar. It's not subtle. It's a grotesque caricature.
Completely single-minded and has no regard for the political process. The more power he attains, the more obvious his zealotry. He is a man seemingly without a conscience, for whom the ends always justify the mean.
You know, it's in all the populist lines about the government spewing hate against minorities, which now blends seamlessly with America today.
We did what we had to do. Islington, Enfield, I was there, I saw it all.
On day one, I will launch the largest deportation program in American history.
Immigrants, Muslims,
illegals, they got whatever they want, don't they?
homosexuals,
Her and her pimp handlers.
terrorists.
They're on the side of the terrorists.
It's poisoning the blood of our country. It's so bad, and people are coming in with disease.
Disease-ridden degenerates. They had to go.
Completely single-minded and has no regard for the political process.
I know that everyone here will soon be marching over to the Capitol building.
The more power he attains, the more obvious his zealotry and the more aggressive his supporters become.
To peacefully and patriotically make your voices heard.
Multiple capital entries! Multiple capital entries!
Immigrants,
These people.
Muslims,
By these people.
homosexuals,
Think about these people.
terrorists, disease-ridden.
They're poisoning the blood of our country. That's what they've done. They poison mental institutions and
They had to go.
Day one, my first hour in office, those people are gone.
Strength through unity. Unity through faith.
We love you, Jesus, and we also love our country. And we thank you that you've raised up a man, Donald J. Trump, to be a warrior for the Word of God.
Day one, my first hour in office.
And the wisdom that comes from God.
That you would give him the mind of Christ according to Philippians 2:5.
Those people are gone.
I'm a God-fearing Englishman, and I'm goddamn proud of it.
That's quite enough of that, thank you very much.
I mean, forget your Nazi comparisons. We're talking about watching Star Wars and wanting the Empire to win.
The end of a regime that acquiesces to disorder.
You know, the rebels are fundamentally just terrorists.
They're on the side of the terrorists.
America has evolved beyond that shining city on the hill thing to the dark place where not only can 50% of the people not recognize cartoon-level fascism, they want it to win.
So when you watch Star Wars, which side do you root for?
Populism doesn't solve problems. It just blames real problems on scapegoats. It's a feelings thing, not a facts thing.
So, we have, I think approximately 70% of Republicans still say that Donald Trump won the 2020 election. It's like, are we going to abandon truth to that degree?
To which the simple answer is yes, 70% have abandoned facts to that level. Facts really don't matter here. It's a feelings thing.
I mean, it's absolutely absurd. I mean, after all this time, all the courts that were, solicited to look into it, there's been no evidence.
And third, I want a recount. And no matter how it turns out, I want my old job back. Okay. And I want a bigger office.
Most of the evidence I've seen so far has been Republicans trying to corrupt the election. And yet they continue to put it out there and promote it. It's like, how does a party survive in a setting like that?
The answer is, of course, easily, as thousands of religions have shown over thousands of years. This is just the latest iteration of faith over facts. Now, about the time that Brexit won, so did Trump for the first time. But there was enough creative inertia and adults in the room to stop it getting too bad. And this is still how it ended up the first time. There are no more adults in the room, and Project 2025 will ensure that loyalty to the leader, who now has the unchecked powers of a king, not qualifications, will be the new order of new America.
This election is a choice between law and criminality. I believe she will only nominate judges who the American Bar Association says are qualified, and while this is a low bar, Trump can't clear that bar as he nominated 10 judges who the ABA rated as completely unqualified. And I believe it is highly likely that she will not destroy the rule of law. It is highly likely that she will actually uphold the rule of law. And saying that out loud, I can't believe how low the bar is, but that's where it's been set. There it is.
Now, about half of Americans clearly seem to think that Project 2025 is worth a spin. And to a fair degree that, once you've convinced half of the turkeys to actually vote for Christmas, you're already boned. Yeah, when your qualifications for a position to make America great again is loyalty to this guy.
In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there. And this is what's happening in our country.
For me, it's almost surreal that this guy has got a coin-flipping chance of winning.
And to those people, all I will say is go out and vote. Elections are won by turnout. Please do whatever you can to vote this year and convince your friends to do the same and not sit on the sideline.
I would say, God help America. Except God doesn't make the world this way. We do. Choose your destiny.